Hello, this is George Roberts. Thank you for joining me for this talk. I'm going to talk about learning difference. In terms of learning, people differ in a few recognizable ways. I suggest ways of knowing, foundations of authority, application of logic, the use value of theory, orientation to time, and source of power. Knowing, authority, logic, theory, time, and power, people are different in all of these dimensions. And I suggest that these are at least as important as those dimensions of the body or of culture which are protected in legislation. In ways of knowing, people differ at least in four ways, maybe more. The rational, the empirical, and the pragmatic were identified and characterized by Scheffler about 40, 50 years ago. For the rational, he suggests a geometry as an example. Reason need not have a real substrate. Something need not have occurred in the world to be considered rationally. We can perform rational operations on perfect circles and so on. The empiricist, empirical ways of knowing are grounded in the material evidence of the senses, okay? Real stuff. The pragmatic is concerned with what causes visible material effects or change in the natural and built environment, society as well. And the intuitive, the leap from one reasonably justifiable true belief to another reasonably justifiable true belief with no obvious intervening steps. In respect to foundations of authority, people, this is Badiou, people differ with respect to desire, science, art, and politics. His terminology shifts a little bit, but these are the four categories. Where desire may embrace erotic desire, but also desire for any goal. A love of sport or learning could be an example, or passion for a cause. Science, not passion, but hypotheses, an experiment tell us what to do, often expressed in numbers. Art's the only master or mistress in music, poetry, painting, dance, etc., are self-justifying acts. And politics, the Hegelian state, law, institutions, and polity are where all authority resides. These four seem to be quite foundational. In the application of logic, there also appear to be four. The deductive applies the rules, needs to know the rules before proceeding. The inductivist, on the other hand, derives the rules, likes to get their hands dirty. The affective is concerned with it feeling right. And the effective, it works. For different orientations to logic and for different orientations to theory. The predictive, quite closely related to logic, the predictive, if we do this, then that will happen. Whereas the explanatory, much more of an empiricist, because this and this and this happened, the sun comes up, and the sun comes up, and the sun comes up. It must be because the great dung beetle rolls a scarab rolls a ball of dung across the sky. Because of this and this and this happens, it must be because of that. Falsifiable and contested, this is Poplar's positivism. Theory is actually useful because it provokes argument, okay? Competing theories collide. And theory is generative. It begets theory in a continuous cycle. And this can be a problem. A person with a generative orientation to theory is often that person you can't shut up in class. Maybe me. There are also four different orientations to time which begin to fit into this alignment. The future. In the future, things will be better. People have an orientation towards the future. There is a goal, a telos, not yet achieved. Some people are more oriented in the other direction. History, core samples, timelines. And you can think of the rationalist being more future-oriented, while the empiricist is more past-oriented. There is a concern, there are those people whose concern for time is more with the eternal, theologians perhaps, and those who are more concerned with the present, be here, now, in the moment. And we also see 4 sources of power. Connection, power to make connections and build alliances, the power to interpret or to deceive, controlling information, the power of boundaries and limits, fortresses, walls, defense here and no further, or the power of growth and incursion, expansion, usurpation, or offense. So to recap, in terms of learning, we recognize that people differ in a few ways. I suggest ways of knowing, authority, logic, theory, time, and power. And that these signals appear to align, the ways of knowing align with the ways of authority. So you might see Scheffler's ways of knowing, rational, empirical, pragmatic, plus one, call it intuitive, all align with approaches to logic. The rationalist tends to be deductive, apply the rules. If we do this, then that will happen. The empiricist derives the rules. I observe this, I observe this, I observe this, I have this data, I see these patterns, therefore. While the intuitive, it feels right. And the pragmatic, it's effective, it works, it does the job I set out to do. These seem to align with the purposes of theory, predictive, explanatory, falsifiable, and generative. These seem to align with our relationship with time, our relationship with authority, and our relationship to power. I find this interesting, but now to disappoint you, it doesn't really matter very much. My theory of learning has been generated by many predecessors. Theory begets theory, but it applies generally to the problem of grids. Here we have 24 cells with one of 4 entries, making 6 to the power of 4, 1,296 possible permutations of difference in this grid. But it gets more complicated. As theory begets theory, so too is there an adjacency effect. Badiou suggested that authorities tend to turn one another on. Desire, science, art, and politics may meet in one person. The grid becomes a volume. That is, there is a third dimension. It's not a yes or no for any value. There is also a force effect, strong or weak in this case. No one is likely to be strong in every item in a column. There are many such grids. Teaching Perspectives Inventory, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, Big 5 Personality Traits, Bloom's Taxonomy of the Cognitive Domain, Structure of Observed Learning Objectives. And such grids themselves are a dimension of complexity.